At South Texas Health System Children's, your child's health is our priority. When they're ill or injured, we're ready to help. Our team includes on-staff pediatric specialists in infectious disease, cardiology, orthopedics, neurology, ear, nose, and throat, and more. Our round-the-clock care features the Valley's first dedicated children's ER. For more than 15 years, we've offered healing and hope for kids. And we're here for your family now. South Texas Health System Children's.
Where kids come first.
Good afternoon and welcome to our latest Let's Talk Children's Health webinar. I'm Tom Castañeda, the System Director of Marketing and Public Relations for South Texas Health System. On behalf of STHS Children's, thank you for joining us. By addressing issues like proper nutrition, immunizations, physical activity, mental health, and accident prevention, parents can help their children grow up healthy and free from preventable diseases. To help parents prioritize their children's health, STHS Children's launched these Let's Talk Children's Health webinars last year. By raising awareness of health issues that affect children in the Rio Grande Valley and offering expert advice, parents can be better prepared to ensure their children's health and well-being. In this installment, we'll be talking about poison prevention. Now, each year, Americans report more than 2 million poisoning cases per the CDC, and tens of thousands of children are rushed to the emergency room after accidentally ingesting dangerous household chemicals. For survivors and their families, the experience can be traumatizing, and the recovery in many instances can be long and difficult. That's why it is important for parents to be aware of the ways to shield their children from poisonous substances, including prescribed drugs and household cleaning supplies. So what can we do to protect our kids from accidental poisoning? Well, today we're joined by Dr. Cynthia Gutierrez, the director of the City of FAR Health Department, with the answer. Dr. Gutierrez, thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. How are you?
I am well, and yourself?
I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much.
Now, when it comes to poison prevention, the City of FAR, what do you all do in your department to kind of educate your residents about poison prevention?
So something that right now is going on, one of our departments, the Department of Public Utilities, has a program going on where they're helping residents test for lead, which is very important. As you know, lead poisoning can lead to neurological problems, especially in young children, very young children. And so we're recommending that if you live in an old house, an old apartment, and you have concerns, have the paint tested and change the paint if it tests positive for lead, and if further concerns, take children to get tested for lead levels.
Yeah, because there are a lot of homes in the Rio Grande Valley that are older than the 1970s. Right. I believe my mom's house is 1975. So I know that a lot of homes are a lot older. So you may see some of those chemicals that were used in homes that unfortunately aren't safe anymore. So we have to be really careful.
Right. So as well as asbestos. A lot of those homes, they have a combination of asbestos and lead. And so lead can lead to poisoning, and it can exacerbate respiratory illnesses that are going on from asbestos, and also the danger of with old houses with mold.
Okay.
So all those things are combined. We're talking about poisoning today, but we have to remember that when children, especially very young children, are exposed to any type of chemical, it's added to the danger of anything else that's going on in the environment, and in addition to their health.
Yeah, and then obviously then you run the risk of a medicine cabinet. You run the risk of all of those cleaning supplies. I know we love our Fabuloso, but drinking that blue liquid that looks like it could be Kool-Aid or a Capri Sun is really dangerous. So we have to make sure that our homes are truly protected, right?
And that's something that we're going to discuss today. There's a lot of chemicals that are labeled by how dangerous. There are lists of the 10 most common chemicals or substances that can lead to poisoning. Now there's we're gonna discuss right now. There's when you ingest or you are exposed to a chemical inadvertently, you don't do it on purpose. But sometimes, especially in adults, it can happen that they, because of abuse, they may inject or give the children on purpose this chemicals. But in this case, when we talk about households, we have to be very careful because children like to explore, and they like smells, they like colors, they like taste. And so, especially if we put, like you mentioned, chemicals or any type of substance into containers that they're familiar with, like Coke cans, juice boxes. If I can tell you a personal story, my husband, when he was 3 years old, and a lot of people are not going to remember because I'm sure everyone out there is very young, but during Hurricane Beulah, he ingested gasoline from a Coke bottle.
Okay.
They had put it there to put into the lawnmower. And so he ingested, and he had to be airlifted to
wow.
to Corpus Christi. And so remember that those can cause burning, and as well as many other complications, bleeding, and etc. So he was 3 years old when he was exposed. So this is a topic that we're very familiar.
And it's near and dear to you and your family then, because you've lived through it, where you're through hearing the stories from your husband. Now you have a great presentation for us, which has a lot of important information that the community needs to know about. So let's get started.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Cynthia Gutierrez, Director of Public Health with the City of FAR. And so today we're going to talk about how to prevent poisoning from any type of substance that or chemical, and even cosmetics, because that's on the list of very common items that children get into. And so the definition, let's start with the definition. According to the CDC, poison is any injury that happens from the exposure of any substance, any chemical, or any product that can lead to injury or death. Poisons can be swallowed, they can be put on the skin, they can be ingested, they can be inhaled, and like I said, sometimes on purpose they can be injected and given to a person. And so there's two types, unintentional and intentional. Unintentional poisonings from drugs and other household chemicals happen to everyone. We're all at risk. We can get into something at a friend's house that we don't know that that was left there by accident. I recently, a few days ago, had it's going to seem like all my family is getting into this type of deals, but she went to a restaurant and they had a lemonade jar, and they had put Clorox with water to clean surfaces. But one of the waiters went and served 3 people water. So my sister and 2 others ingested the Clorox. At first, she says she thought it was gastritis, within a few seconds, and they had to be taken to the hospital because of that. So, even as adults, we run the risk of coming into contact with things like that. So in 1970, there was Congress passed an act to protect children, especially from all these chemicals. So this was the Poison Prevention Packaging Act, and it happened in 1970. And under this act, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission has issued regulations for about 30 products and medications and other substances. So I have here the numbers that of the most common household items that children and people get exposed to. So if you look at the list, acetaminophen, which is an analgesic or a pain medication, is at the top of the list, followed by another medication, dietary supplements, and others. And so what is important to know is this chart right here is from 1972, right after the act was passed. And if you look at the numbers, the number of poisonings that were reported to the poison control centers in the United States went from more than 200 to in 2020 less than 50. I'm sorry. But if you look at the chart towards the end of 2020, and 21, 22, and this past years, the numbers went up again. And so there are several theories, but we must remember that during the pandemic, we were all at home. So it's more likely that children would be exposed to chemicals because of that. And we have the same chart here, but this one is focusing only from 2013, to 2021. And again, you can see that the trend was down and it started going up right after 2019 when the pandemic began. And it can be attributed somewhat to being at home during the pandemic, during the hard times of isolation at home. So how many people call poison control centers here in the United States each year? In 2021, the 55 U.S. poison control centers received approximately 2.08 million exposures. From those 6.1 exposures, and that's 6.1 cases per every 1,000 residents or every 1,000 people. 37.0 poison exposures in children younger than 6 years old for every 1,000. And then one poison exposure reported to about every 15 seconds. Now, how old are the people who poison control assists? So children younger than 6 years old comprise the largest part of this exposures. We have that the peak is in the 1 and 2 year olds. And again, we are talking about children that are more than likely at home, that are attending daycares, and they get into all kinds of products. The greater proportion of males in poison exposures is until age 13. From age 13, it starts going down, the trend changes to more females. So younger than 12, adolescents and children are mostly males, and after 13 is more females than the males. Now, are they intentional or unintentional from what's reported? So in all ages, 75.5% of all exposures that are reported are unintentional. So that's good. That's good that it's not being done on purpose. 19.3 are intentional. The 3.1% have adverse reactions, and we're talking about allergies, allergic reactions to whatever chemicals, whether it be a skin reaction or respiratory. And then in children younger than 6 years old, 99% of the exposures are unintentional. In the teen exposures, only 29.1% were unintentional. And in adult exposures, 62.4% are unintentional. So all of these are not done on purpose. But what are the most common substances implicated in poison exposures? We saw the chart earlier. And as I mentioned, one of the first chemicals that they had, or medications, was acetaminophen, which is, I don't know if I can say the brand, but a very well-known pain medication, anti-pyretic fever medication. And here, if you look at the 10 most common, the first one's still cosmetics and personal care products, which a lot of women nowadays are using. We're using a lot of creams, a lot of new products that are coming out, creams, makeup, etc. So, and personal care products. A lot of cases happen with shampoo, believe it or not. A lot of children that while the mom is putting on makeup, the child goes into the showers playing and is drinking shampoo or body wash. It's followed by cleaning substances, analgesics, pain medications, dietary supplements. We have toys, miscellaneous foreign bodies, vitamins, antihistamines, and topical creams, plants, because when we're talking about poisonings, we're not only talking about household items. We can, be exposed to a plant and have a reaction. So those are the 10 most common. But which ones are the ones that cause the most serious? If we look at the list, we have again the analgesics are at number one, which are pain medications. We have, and I'm sorry about the glasses, we have the fumes, the gases and vapors, for example, as we were discussing from carbon monoxide. We have unknown drugs where children are taken to the hospital and the parents or the caregivers cannot determine what they were exposed to. We have, etc. You can look at the list: cardiovascular drugs, stimulants, antihistamines, alcohol, other chemicals, and anesthetics. And we'll go over those in a little bit. So how serious are exposures? So in 2020, 83% of poison exposures reported to U.S. poison centers were non-toxic, minimally toxic, or had at most a minor effect or reaction. Of all the intentional exposures, that's significantly more serious. They were nearly 3 times as serious. That means that they had major outcomes and even death than the unintentional. And of the intentional exposures, 37% had major effects compared to the just 3% of the unintentional. So 37% of intentional end up in major complications and hospitalizations and death compared to the 3% of the not intentional. So how does poisoning happen? Well, these are children that parents think that they cannot reach surfaces because they're too small. However, children are very smart, and when they want to grab something, they find a way to get to it. They find a little block, they find a way to get to it. So young children, as we were discussing, they explore, they wanna try new things, and they get confused and they may drink or get exposed to these chemicals. Items are within reach. Children often copy adults, and so they see us taking medications, and then we leave the medications on our counters and at the kitchen. So the children want to imitate what we do, and so they go and take those medications. So that's why we're going to make recommendations on how to deal with all that. They confuse substances, like you mentioned. Fabuloso looks just like grape juice. And so, it creates confusion for children. And then kids are at more risk of poisoning because their bodies are smaller. So if you remember, whenever they give a prescription for children, it's based on their body weight, because even medications that are prescribed, they have to be very careful on the amount that is given to the child because of the risk of damaging the liver, the kidney, or because of the way that this medication is going to be metabolized. So the same thing with chemicals. When children are ingesting those, it runs the risk of damaging their organs and creating all kinds of problems. So especially because of that, we have to be extra careful with how we handle all of our items at home. So how do we prevent poisonings in children? Store any toxic substance that that children will be exposed to and can cause injury or death. Please store them in a high place, under lock, with their original labels, in a locked cabinet, in original containers. Buy products with child-resistant caps, but we have to remember that is not enough. We have to use as many of these initiatives to try to avoid children being exposed, because again, it's happened to me where I close the cap and it's child-resistant, for a lot of over-the-counter medications, and I think it closed. I put it in my purse, and then next day I have pills everywhere. And so, we have to make sure that it did click and it did close. Choose the least toxic products for your purposes, for cleaning, for whatever you're using them, for your cars. Choose the least toxic. And if you can avoid buying products that are, I forgot the word, that you can mix with water and make more of.
That you can dilute?
Yes, you can dilute. Especially when you're talking about ammonia, bleach, and any of those chemicals that can that can cause bleeding and a lot of problems in the digestive system. We have to be very careful with those. And read all the labels to find out what products are poisonous. Do not assume that because you've used the product for a long time that it's not poisonous. Also, do not assume that chemicals or creams or any product that you have used in your children are safe, because remember that at any time, at any age, we can develop allergic reactions to anything, to foods, and all kinds of products. Follow all the safety measures on product labels. And I'm going to say this again, follow all safety measures on product labels, because we are very good at assuming that it's drank or taken in a certain way. And then a few hours later, we read it, and it's like, oh, I didn't take it like that. So we have to be sure that we read the labels the way and know specifically how to use it, especially if we're going to give it to children. And then don't keep any items on your purse, your bag, or where you're going to carry them, your gym bag, because children, you will put it on a table, you will put it on the sofa, forget about it, and children will go, through your purse. And as I mentioned, sometimes I have pills everywhere because I forget to close them tightly. Earlier, you talked about lead. And so we talked about how it's important that, especially if you live in an old house, whenever you suspect a case of lead poisoning, to make sure that if it's in your household, that the paint is tested. Children love to, especially when they're teething around that age that was mentioned, that's the peak, the 1-2 year olds, they start biting onto surfaces, onto walls, and they can get lead poisoning. If you have a child who is having neurological issues, that you see a change, and they visit a daycare, they have a caregiver that it's away from home, you also have to make sure that those homes are safe. So ask questions, rather earlier than later. And so to make sure that your child's daycare, your caregiver has a home that is lead-free. And if in doubt, take your child to the doctor and have them tested for lead, because at times they're also exposed through water, through the pipings, and those are cases in which we as parents have no control, rather than observe our children. And if when we see any changes, make sure that you visit your doctor and their pediatrician and get them diagnosed. And then carbon monoxide, it's a gas, it has no odor, and so it has also flu-like symptoms. So especially when whole families are showing the same symptoms at the same time, and they're acute, they happen all of a sudden, and everyone is going through the same, get out of the house and get fresh air and call 911. So the recommendation here is to have carbon monoxide detectors, and to test and change batteries every year to make sure that they're in proper working order. The other thing is making sure that a furnace, a heater, your oven, that all those appliances are working, and they're in proper working order, especially if they're old. Sometimes we get attached to our old stove and stuff, but we have to make sure that we also change them every so often, because remember that the compliance and the regulations change every so many years, and we may have appliances at home that are not only a danger for carbon monoxide, but also for fire hazards. So, it's one of those things that we have to keep an eye on. And then the biggest recommendation is to have the number for the Poison Control Center, the local Poison Control Center, the national, have them on speed dial, have them, there are events where they give you a sticker so you can put it next to your phone so you can have it ready. But remember that at times, if you are going through, yourself or children are going through an adverse event or an emergency, we get nervous and we forget numbers, phone numbers. And so it's very important to have it on speed dial, to have them, next to the phone, because even if we think we have it memorized, at times during emergencies, what first responders have seen, people forget their addresses. They forget, their, the most basic information. So it's important. And again, please have all those numbers. And then something very important that we always stress in public health is emergency preparedness. And so it's always a good idea to research what types of dangers your child is going to be exposed to in a field trip, during a vacation, because we're only talking about items that and substances that we will have our children exposed at home or at friend's house, school, and daycare. But we also have to remember that when we take field trips, when we take vacations, that we're prepared as well to respond in case of an emergency. And so preparedness is number one in public health. And I think that is it.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Gutierrez. Now let's go into a little bit of detail here when it comes to poison prevention, just to make sure that we drill it home and make sure that people understand. Now, you had mentioned it in your presentation, and it's such an interesting fact that we have 55 poison control centers here in the United States, and they get a call every 15 seconds.
Wow.
That is a lot of calls. Just in the span of this presentation, that would have been 400 to 450 calls that they would have received already with poisonings. So it is definitely more common
and
than we know.
That 3% of those end up in death. Remember that we saw those numbers? 3% have either a major adverse effect or death. So that's why we have to be prepared. That's why it's important, because it's bound to happen at one point or another to anyone. And so that's why it's important to first take precautions, and then to know that we're humans and we may forget, and that's how accidents happen. But that's why it's important to drill home that we have to be prepared.
Now, it's interesting that we were talking about the pandemic and how you've seen that number of increased poisonings happening around the country post-COVID and during COVID. Do you think it's important that we have to re-educate ourselves and our children just on the dangers and remind them of those dangers? And it has to happen in the schools, it has to happen in the home. It really has to be a well thought out plan to make sure that these poisonings start going back down again, right?
Correct. And again, it was bound to happen because more people were at home during the pandemic, and so more children were running around and playing, and that had an effect on the parents, who may not have been as vigilant and careful as when the children are not home, because we're not used to it, because they're at school, because they're at daycare, because we're at work. And so we have to remind everyone that still the numbers went up. We have to work to get back to all those practices from before the pandemic, and not only with the substance, but like I mentioned, medications. After the pandemic, a lot more people have issues with mental health, with long COVID, with respiratory illnesses, with all kinds of effects from having COVID. And so there's a lot more medications at home. There's a lot more, perhaps, we become lax in our practices. So we have to go back to that so that the numbers can go down again.
And really police it.
Correct.
All right. Now, you talked about younger than 6, 99% are unintentional. So that really means that these are accidental poisonings that are happening.
Right.
So it really isn't, it's an issue of really paying close attention.
Correct.
And that the 1 to 2 year olds are really, they're at that age where they're exploring. And we have to remember that's what it's all about, is they're exploring. And so you got to make sure that they're not exploring in places where, in those cabinets, that you're keeping things out of reach from them, right?
Right. And we have to remember, children are children, and they're going to be playing, and they're going to be exploring. And so it's up to us adults to make sure that they don't get into, those items, especially the cleaning supplies. At times we get so busy, and we only have the weekend to clean, and and it's sometimes we forget, as we mentioned earlier, to put the cap correctly, to put it under the cabinet, to close it. All those things matter. That the good news, as I mentioned when I started, the good news is that are unintentional, because remember, that age is also very prone to abuse because they're not bound to report it. So the good news is that those children that are being exposed to poisons is not done on purpose. So that's in a way good.
Now, one of the things when it comes to basically child-proofing your home is you really have to get at the kids level. And I know that we don't really necessarily think about that, but kids are a lot smaller than us. So you have to really get yourselves down to their level to really be seeing everything that they could be exposed to and what is at reach for them, right?
Right. And we have to explain to them in a way that they understand, because at times we try to explain to our kids and they hear us, but they don't understand us. And so we have to educate them in a way that it gets the message across. And we also have to work with our schools, and we have to work with our daycares, as parents with the Head Starts, because we have to make sure that they're observing all of the protocols and that they have all of the initiatives in place that are going to keep your child safe, because your child is going to be a small percentage at home during the day, but they're at school and they're exposed to paints, colors, and all of those things. So you have to work with them. If your child has allergies, you have to be vigilant and work with the schools in reminding them what your child is allergic to, because you can control what's going on at home, but unless you're at school, you can't. So you have to also ask questions, do you have and we're gonna go off a little bit off topic, but do you have a Stop the Bleed kit? Do you have EpiPens? What's your protocol for poison, for a poisoning event? What protocols do you use? We forget. And then when it happens, right after we're like, I should have asked.
I should have had a sheet with all of the things to do.
Exactly, I should have asked. So it's important to not be afraid and not be embarrassed, because at times we don't want to be the parent that's asking questions, but it's better for you to ask questions than regret it later.
And be proactive and not reactive.
Correct.
So by having that sheet, by having the plan, knowing just like you have a fire plan for your home when there's a fire,
Right.
where you're all supposed to meet, what exits you're supposed to go through, what are the safe ways to leave the house. Same thing when it comes to poison.
Correct.
If there's a poisoning, step A, B, C, and D
Right.
to make sure that you're safe and then you get
Exactly.
the attention you need right away.
And that the nurses at the schools or at the daycares know how to deal with that, because at times we want to do something for the person that's going through this emergency, and so we automatically want them to throw up. But there are chemicals that when
Can
they
come back
go,
up,
yes,
it's gonna cause more damage.
more damage, because they already corroded, and so coming back, it's going to be double the damage. So you have to make sure that they get that they are getting the proper trainings to deal with these emergencies. So that's why I think it's important to mention that.
It surprised me to see that on your sheet that makeup was number one, and it was tied there with cleaning products. But makeup, what is it about makeup that you think makes it so attractive to kids to try to taste? And
we see it on Facebook all of the time. Kids want to try it too. And then if you see children, I don't know if you've ever done activities with children with fruits or, and it's for the activity and they're eating it and they're playing with it, and the paint, they eat the paint, And so it's the same thing with makeup. They start playing with it, but when they're small, it's very easy for them to try it. It's attractive, it's colorful, and how bad could it be? It's the mentality of a child. They're experimenting, and the way they do is by taste, by touch, by, you know, they use their senses. And so it's very common that they try these makeups and creams.
And if they make it smell like bananas or
Yes.
strawberries, like a chapstick, what's to say you're not going to bite into it and think, oh,
Exactly.
it's going to taste like a banana,
Yeah,
not realizing
this
it.
smells familiar. And, you know, it smells like something that I eat. It's not dangerous, and it's something that my mom gives me all of the time.
So let's go through the prevention for medicine. So you mentioned some really important tips, but just obviously making sure that you are storing your medicines properly and that you're using child safe labels and caps to make sure that they're closing properly and keeping them at a higher distance away from kids, right?
Use labels, the products as intended by the label. One very common that happened during the pandemic was the spray to disinfect that disinfects 0.99% of the time.
Yes.
You know which one
Yes.
I'm talking about?
Yes.
So I don't know if you've noticed that when you spray it, you get your respiratory tract gets really irritated, and you start coughing, and for hours, you know, you can feel that burning. So imagine children, if that's our case
Happening
now.
to you.
Yes. So if you read the label, that product is supposed to be sprayed on surfaces and left alone.
Yes.
But we use it for odor.
Yes.
You know, because we're going to disinfect the air, and in reality, we can't disinfect, you know, the air. You know, it's intended for surfaces. So that's a perfect example. And that was all of us. Still knowing that, I sometimes go and Lysol everything, and then I'm thinking, you know, it's not doing much.
Yes, it's not doing what it's intended
Yes,
to do,
but
it could be affecting your health.
Yes, and then for children, it could be very irritating. If it's irritating to them, it could be a lot more dangerous than us.
And we see, unfortunately, that, I mean, we are a culture where we have our grandparents around, like living with us in many instances. And so we see a lot of pill boxes that people use to make it easy and convenient for seniors in a home to be able to get to their medicines. But unfortunately, those pill boxes can be very dangerous to kids because it's easy access.
Especially because a lot of our elders use what people call blood thinners. And so imagine what that can do to a child. So we have to be very careful, because if we have a baby, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, they see grandma and grandpa, and they love grandma and grandpa, and they see them take these pills, you know, they give me candy, you know, those look like candy. And so, you know, we have to be very careful with those as well.
I'm thinking of Benadryl because it's bright pink, and I only take it when I'm having like a skin reaction. But I can imagine what it would look like to a kid, like a Tic Tac.
Yes, exactly. And so there's many medications that are colorful, that are small. They look like a TikTok, and they can have very, very bad effects on children.
Now, with the household products, obviously, once again, it's making sure that you're not, a lot of people, as you said, reuse different bottles, a Coca-Cola bottle or whatever, and they're going to go ahead and put it in there, and not thinking that a child may see the label, even the shape, even if you take the label off, you know it's a bottle of soda, and so you assume it's soda.
And some of the plastic ones look like a water bottle. You know, when you take the label off, it looks like a bottled water. So if you have anything that's colorful there and the child needs a drink, they're coming from the outside. Sometimes they're sweaty. They just want to drink something. They see it on the table. It's a clear plastic, you know, to them. They're not going to go look at the shape and see if it is really, you know, and they get confused.
So
and
that's
what
why,
happens.
So original containers, remember to continue to use it.
Yes.
One of the things that we've also noticed is that laundry packets. So now it used to be where you would use the laundry detergent, and so obviously,
Those
but now
pods.
they have those little pods that people are now using to clean to wash their clothes. Those kids are getting into, right?
And then we're not going to get today into the teenagers challenges that we all see on Facebook and TikTok and all those. But yes, those are very dangerous soap.
And it's concentrated,
and,
right?
That's the word that I was looking for earlier.
Sorry,
yes,
I thought of it now.
Concentrated. And it's something that can kill a child within a few hours. So there has been cases where children have died because they have ingested laundry detergent or dish washing liquid. And so we have to be, again, put everything in a level that the children cannot access, and do not assume that they're not going to get into it, because as high as you put it, children, oh my God, you see commercials, you see all these videos where the children, get into all kinds of objects, and they get to the top to get the cookies. And just the same way, they can get something that is not good for them. And especially something that I mentioned is not buying products that look like food.
Yes.
Anything that looks like food is dangerous for pets and for children.
Now, one of the things that people may not think about is art supplies. So we have kids who love to draw, who love to paint, and those can be toxic, right? So we also have to be careful even with those items.
Right. And again, never assume, because we may think that at our child's school, daycare, Head Start, that they're using only the best products, that they're using, and that we're buying, especially at low cost places, that we're buying the best. But we see it all the time. We see the CDC issuing all these alerts with toys, with products that have paint, that has lead, and that was illegally acquired and then passed as a brand item. And so again, if the label says, we should be safe, but we never know. So why allow our children to, like you mentioned earlier, color their Easter eggs and then be eating the paint or putting it in their mouth? And but also make sure that what you're buying says that it's for that it's age appropriate.
Okay.
That what you're buying is intended for the children that are going to be using it. Because if you're going to give a 1-year-old, 2-year-old paint for the eggs, you better sit down next to that child and make sure that they're using it properly.
Yeah, that they're not putting it in their mouth.
Exactly, because it's usually intended for 3, 4, 5-year-olds, if not older, depending on the products that you're using. And then I don't know if you've ever seen children love to, open markers and play with them, and they suck on the inside of the marker. So that's why there are brands that say that they're safe for children, but we still have to make sure that they use it properly, because again, we control what's in our homes, but we don't know on the outside when they go somewhere else.
And when it comes to carbon monoxide poisoning, obviously that is an issue. About 10,000 plus carbon monoxide exposures happen in the U.S. each year. So if you, especially right now, we're dealing with a little bit of cooler weather, people are turning on their heaters. What advice do you have for them if they haven't necessarily used their heater, for a while, and they're turning it back on?
I recently, the last cold weather that we had a few months ago, it was about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So we hadn't used our heater, not last year, for about 2 years. And so what we did is we turned it on and we left the house. We left it running for a little bit, came back, and it was not heating. So we realized after a few hours that it was not working properly. But we turned it on and we left because we hadn't used it. We use the air conditioning all the time, but the heater we didn't. So we turned it on and we left and we let it run for a little bit. We came back and again, it was not working. So we had somebody come and service it. And so that's the recommendation, that you service your air conditioning, your furnace, your heaters, and especially ovens. And also, if you lose energy and you're going to use one of those generators, You know, we've seen people die because they connected too close to the house or inside. Those are intended to be several feet away from the home. You know, that's why you use a long cord, you know, so that whatever carbon monoxide they're producing is not going to get into the house and is not going to cause any problems.
So you just really have to make sure if you do use a generator
Right.
that it's more than 10 feet, I believe,
Right.
is the
On the
safe
outside.
distance
Right.
outside of the home.
Right.
And you should never bring a generator inside.
And you should never turn on your car and get in the car because it's cold in the house and you don't have a heater. You should never get into the car, turn it on, and stay in the car, because at times the exhaust is faulty, and the carbon monoxide, instead of being thrown out, it stays inside, and people have died in their cars unintentionally because of that, you know, with their children.
All
so
right.
that's another, you know, recommendation. Every year, school districts, our county, cities open shelters. You know, if not during those times, when
Yes.
use them.
Now, pesticides, we also have a lot of pesticides that can be found. We have a lot of ant problems or things like
Right.
that. That can also be really dangerous. So if you're going to store those, if you, let's say you have a shed or whatever, just making sure that those are especially because they come in bags that are, you rip open and you can't really seal it again, right?
And there's
So-
no reason why a shed should not have a lock, you know, on the outside
So lock
to
it.
begin with. Yes, because when you have a shed, the majority of the items that are there are for adult use, for, like you say, for pests, for painting, for gardening. So there's no reason for a child to go in there. You know, and you shouldn't be storing toys or anything that children need to get on their own from there if you're not supervising. So my recommendation is to have a lock at the door. And again, I see no reason why, you know, you should have a shed that children have access to. If it serves as a garage shed type of deal, then again, be vigilant with children, because you know, they, in a few seconds, you know, you lose them and they're getting into things.
And we've talked a lot about 6 and under, right? And all of the things that we have to do to protect. But let's talk about the older kids that we have in our homes. And there's one issue that I think most parents will know is alcohol in the home. And
Right.
unfortunately, alcohol can also lead to poisoning and can be very dangerous if you are drinking and not necessarily knowing your limits.
Right.
And so we see it a lot with teenagers that we get alcohol poisonings. So what advice do you have for any parents who may have some teenagers in the home and they have alcohol in the home? What should they do?
Let me start with the children, because I forgot to mention that at times, you know, especially with our culture, it's very funny that the child tries the beer and we laugh, and then, you know, children start acting up, you know, like adults, because it's funny and we laugh and they like it, you know, but then we're sending a very wrong message, because the moment the child finds a drink anywhere, you know, they're going to pick it up because it's funny,
Yeah.
because it's okay. You know, my family laughs and they make, you know, I'm the center of attention when I'm doing that, when I'm playing. And so, you know, that's important, that we have to teach our children from the get-go, since they're small, that alcohol is it's something that we need to have control of, because it is a danger for teenagers, you know, during the teenage years, but it can also lead to long-term problems, alcoholism, and then, you know, long-term health and mental health issues. So a recommendation when you have alcohol, again, they sell cabinets that have a key, you know, but the most important part is education.
Yes.
Education, communication.
From a young age.
Yes, from a young, and then have that communication, you know, with your children, and know that it's no one's fault when children start, you know, go through the teenage years. You know, those teens, the 13 through the 19, you know, they're the years that, if you think about, children are going through hormone changes. And then we're very good at recognizing that women go through menopause, and we all say, yes, it's definitely a change, and women are going, and we don't recognize that children at that age are going through changes. And at times, If there are any chemical imbalances and a teenager tries alcohol, and for the first time they feel leveled or normal, they're going to continue drinking because mom and dad are dying, is lying. It's not bad. It tastes good and it makes me feel good. So we have to have that communication and tell children, yes, but it can lead
to serious issues,
to very serious issues, and not to mention legal issues in the future as well. So.
And then now let's get to the first aid tip. So just as a reminder to everyone to conclude this, there are 4 things that you can do if you feel that you are exposed to a poison or your child has been exposed. So for any exposure, you should call the poison helpline. That number is 1-800-222-1222. And you shouldn't wait to see any signs and symptoms, right, doctor?
Right,
you should
no.
call right away if you know that they've ingested something.
Right. Our children are the most important asset or thing that we have. When it comes to pet, it eats a grape and we're at the vet. Our children, same thing. At times I hear parents that say, well, I was waiting to see, he didn't vomit, but the effects can happen hours later, especially if you see that a child is drowsy, that they're behaving differently.
Yeah.
Don't wait to see if, right away take them to the doctor, to the emergency room, because
right
all
away.
those numbers that we talked about, all those happen at the emergency rooms.
The second thing, if you have any skin contact with any chemicals, you should always wash the area thoroughly with soap and water.
Correct.
And make sure that you are trying to get all of that off of you, right?
Right.
All right, eye exposure, you should thoroughly rinse your eyes for 20 minutes. So not just a little bit and it feels okay.
Right.
You should really give it a good 20-minute thorough wash,
And
right?
and still, during those 2 that we talked about washing skin, washing eyes, you should be on the phone with poison control. You're taking care of that, but depending on the type of chemicals, you should be on the phone with poison control already.
Walking them through what you
Right.
were exposed to, what
Right.
you're feeling,
Because
and
at
everything, and
times
just
they
making
give you
sure.
recommendations. At times they tell you, well, give him this, and see if it's recommended to throw up, give him this and see if the child does. If not, they know, they have those lists. That's what they do all the time. So they can tell you, take him immediately, or they call 911 because they know that there's going to be crucial minutes from your home to the hospital. So they'd rather have emergency personnel already stabilizing and working on children while they get to the hospital.
And lastly, if you ingested or swallowed anything, again, call Poison Help, 1-800-222-1222. And you had some really good advice about just save the number in your phone, poison control,
Right.
have it in your phone so if the emergency does come up, you can already automatically dial the number without trying to remember it.
Yeah, remember that, and during emergencies, there's all this adrenaline, all this noise. We're trying to care for a loved one most of the times. So you're gonna forget, number, steps, I hear people say, I practice this all of the time when it came down to the emergency. For example, doing CPR, you forget the steps because you're in a state that is not conducive to thinking about, okay, I have to do all of this. So that's why we recommend have a sticker or have a pad with the numbers and instruct all of the family how you're talking about preparedness, how you're going to respond to any type of emergency, whether it be this one or anything. Preparedness is the most important thing that we can recommend to people.
All right, well, thank you so much, Doctor. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope this is not the last time.
All right. And that officially concludes our webinar. Thank you for joining us. We hope you will continue to prioritize the health of your children. And we look forward to seeing you for our next installment of this Let's Talk Children's Health series on Wednesday, April 17th from 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. when we talk about autism. Like and follow the STHS Children's Facebook page for more details on our future Let's Talk Children's Health webinars. And to view all our previous Let's Talk webinars, all you have to do is visit sthsletstalk.com. Until our next seminar, stay healthy, stay safe, and please continue to prioritize your health and the health of your little ones.
At South Texas Health System Children's, your child's health is our priority. When they're ill or injured, we're ready to help. Our team includes on-staff pediatric specialists in infectious disease, cardiology, orthopedics, neurology, ear, nose, and throat, and more. Our round-the-clock care features the Valley's first dedicated children's ER. For more than 15 years, we've offered healing and hope for kids. And we're here for your family now. South Texas Health System Children's.
Where kids come first.